Good. Well, Kira, this part's exciting. Now, I know you and I talked just a little bit about graphene, and I can't do it justice, but our next guest actually can make it sound a lot sexier than I can. And I promise you this is probably one of the coolest things that Virginia could have going on. So I'm going to do a quick bio and then bring on Dr. Steve Hooper. So Dr. Hooper's the founder of EnviraCarbon. He's owned and operated mines and mining companies since 1970. He's supervised over 1,000 employees operating mines, as many as 22 mines at a time, managed over 350,000 fee and leased acres from the mountains of West Virginia all the way to the jungles of Borneo, and just an amazing entrepreneur that has looked for innovation and opportunity in the mining industry, which has now led him to graphene manufacturing. So, Dr. Hooper, thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
Now, are you out in Wise, Virginia this morning?
I am in Wise, Virginia, where it is snowing, believe it or not.
What, now, can you? So, I love Wise, Virginia, but just so our listeners understand, where exactly in Virginia is Wise?
It's kind of in the very southwestern corner, about 50 miles north of the Tennessee line.
And it's and obviously a lot of different weather down there than what we get in the rest of the state.
A lot of altitude here, so we get some pretty interesting weather.
Wonderful. Well, let's jump right in. So I teed up a little bit this morning on graphene and didn't want to take a lot of the topics that we're going to talk about here. But let's start in kind of just an overview on what is graphene. And keep in mind, I got that D and AP chemistry like I told you before, so you got to bring it down a little bit to my level.
Well, graphene is, of course, a very fascinating material and is quite simply one carbon atom thick series of carbon atoms that are placed together in what's called a hexagonal lattice. So it looks like that the carbon atoms are in a honeycomb. It's what it looks like. You see a lot of hexagon things now. A lot of that comes from graphene, which makes it the hexagons being hooked together makes it very strong, very flexible, and is just really it's a super material. And so the world's kind of abuzz with graphene. Now,
and when you say hexagonal, so basically like as if we had cut a beehive in half, that type of hexagonal look, correct?
That's correct. And at each juncture, at each one of the corners of the hexagon would be a carbon atom. So the carbon atoms are hooked together in what the carbon allotrope is what that's called, and it's hooked together in a hexagonal lattice. So it looks like chicken wire,
gotcha.
Basically. The only thing is it's very, very small, has to be looked at under an electron microscope, and is nano material.
Sure. Now, when I started off the show this morning talking to Kira, I told her that graphene is expected to be as revolutionary as plastic. And we talked just a little bit about the weight strength ratio. So how strong is this related to, let's say, something like steel?
Well, it depends on who you read, but kind of the minimum amount that scientists seem to agree on is about 200 times stronger than the strongest steel alloy. From there to 300 times, somewhere in that range. Certainly multiple times stronger than steel itself. Harder than a diamond, yet more flexible than elastic. So it's really a fascinating material.
So what could this mean to industries? Let's start out like with aviation and space. I mean, is it really something where you can use this material to be involved in creation of rockets or airplanes where it becomes so much stronger, but at the same time so much lighter that it can have a multiple impact on the payload it can carry?
No question about it. It is more heat resistant than say the tiles would have been on the old space shuttles. Much more heat resistant than that. It's more conductive than copper to conduct electricity. is more heat conductive than any material known, and is the lightest of all materials. And so it is super strong, super light, and it really is so over the top in every area that you might consider using materials of this nature in, that it's a little hard to believe, some of it, but it is certainly true. And it's been discovered now for several years, but is really just now coming into its own in terms of manufacturing and all that sort of thing.
You know, and it's amazing. So getting prepared for this, I was just looking up some stuff just on graphene in general, and the prediction for a melting point of graphene and modeling of it, it looks like the melting point is about 500,000 Kelvin. Now, I don't know what Kelvin is related to Fahrenheit and that sort of thing. I didn't do very well in that science, but obviously that seems extremely hot, especially when they say the sun's surface has an effective temperature of 5,777 Kelvin. So basically, the melting point of graphene is almost what the surface of the sun is.
It's certainly true, and is in the 5,000 degree range, and where the melting point of common steel would be in the 15 to 1,700 degree range. So it's certainly heat resistant.
Now let's talk a little bit about the reality of this, because we talk about, what you and others call a super material, and something that is, so much stronger, 200 times stronger than steel, a melting point almost equivalent to the sun's surface. And so people start thinking, this is, sci-fi, far-fetched, Superman type stuff. But in reality, everyone from Rice University to MIT to the research you've been going, the comments from everyone is the same. It's not a matter of if graphene becomes the material that recreates the world we know. It's just a matter of when. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct, and that's well said, Glenn. It is what the manufacturing world is waiting on. Almost with bated breath, they await the arrival of graphene that is affordable, because it is can be very, very expensive to make, and heretofore has been very expensive for as the researchers like ourselves have worked to come up with a way to manufacture it at a reasonable cost. It is it's been very expensive to manufacture, and so we have one of the things that we've done. We went into the carbon business from plant-based materials back about 10 years ago, and seeing the handwriting on the wall with coal, so we transitioned to that. And we've got a large facility in Arkansas where we manufacture all types of sophisticated high-end carbons from renewable biomass, and one of the byproducts of that, or offshoots of that, is the ability to make graphene in an economical way. And we didn't. It's one of those things you kind of stumble on. Didn't really know we could do it until we read a few things and found out that we could. So it's the world's kind of waiting on us and others that are on the cusp of being able to produce graphene at a reasonable cost.
And that's just amazing. And so, and I love that story too, because it's such a great story of entrepreneurs. And we've all read, throughout history, there's been these huge advances in society, many of them accidental. People were looking for one thing and they found something else, and it went down a different route to truly change the world. And it seems like that is kind of what's happened a little bit with your company, where this was kind of an offshoot accidentally, and it may, be one of those affordable manufacturing processes that evolve to help bring along this new super material.
Yeah, we are already there. Our facility here in Wise, Virginia, is called the Graphene Research Center. But really, and we're still researching, always researching, but we've already determined how to derive graphene from our current processes, and that would include also from coal as well. And so we're really already there. So we're building now the equipment that's necessary to go into commercial production. Hopefully, that'll be in the early fall that'll be ready, and then we'll start producing graphene commercially here in Wise, Virginia. We actually closed, as you know, we closed offices in Florida and in South Carolina, two in South Carolina, research facilities in South Carolina. My home office, which was in Kingsport, Tennessee, and moved all of those to Wise, Virginia, because of the environment of the workforce here, and just the fact that it's a coal-based community, and a lot of the skill sets are common between the two, and so we moved and relocated here to what's now called the Graphene Research Center at Wise, Virginia. We're just really thrilled to be here and blessed to be here.
You know, and that's such an amazing story. You know, you've got a part of the state, and honestly part of the country, that was known and thrived on a carbon-based substance for, centuries, obviously coal. And over the years, coal has been hurt over and over again by various policies at the federal level, and attacked numerous different ways by environmentalists, and it really has hurt Wise, Virginia, and surrounding areas with some of the most hardest working, individuals that one could ever get to know. So I think it's just amazing and great that that there's going to be a resurgence of carbon-based material that will change society as we know it today, and it's going to happen in a place that has always been known for a different type of carbon, and probably put Silicon Valley in kind of that bucket as 1990s when you think about it, as Wise, Virginia becomes Graphene Valley.
Yeah, it certainly is becoming. Graphene is as it surges and as technology has its way of finding economical ways to produce things so that the market can use them. As that's further developed, there's no question that the Silicon Valley, as far as the superconductor part goes, is going to have a run for its money with graphene. They can't. Graphene is much more efficient than the silicon-based things are, and we here at Wise are really excited about all those opportunities. We're predominantly starting off making graphene for composites and to mix in with certain things that are already being manufactured, say plastics and composite materials, because graphene makes them lighter, stronger, all that sort of thing. And so that's the thrust that we have here right now, and where we're going for the next year or so is there. Then we're going to go off into things about conductors and paints, and it's just a myriad of products that we're going into. And might I say that one of the things that we're doing here, been so blessed to be at this facility, which is really a new facility built a few years ago that has just been limitedly occupied, but was just like if we had spec'd out a building, a 25,000 square foot building to move to, this we would have drawn it up like this. It's got two labs in it and all that kind of thing, laboratories, and so we are developing from here a graphene laboratory where we can test composites and the interaction of graphene in various materials, knowing that that's going to attract other companies to come here to co-labor with us to be able to produce graphene here in Wise and to use that graphene in their particular products. We've already attracted one glass company from Europe and a manufacturer in Kentucky is moving here to research with us to be able to use graphene. So it's really astounding.
So let's talk for a second, because you mentioned paint, and I just think this, to truly understand the opportunity that graphene provides, you kind of have to look at the use cases. And when you mention paint, let's talk for a second about why that is so important. I assume you're alluding to the conductivity of graphene for solar and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yes, there's that and a lot of other things too. Just the durability also is a factor. But for the conductivity part, for instance, one of our customers, we're the only manufacturers in the world of carbon black that's made entirely from biomass. And so one of our customers is a coating company that does asphalt coatings and also does line paint for roadways. And we can put graphene, if we put graphene in there to enough concentration in the right size flake so that conductivity continues, in other words, so the flakes touch each other, then you can conduct electricity through that paint down the roadway. You can conduct communication signals down that paint. You could make broadband go in the lines on the road. It's just astounding. It's like something out of Alice in Wonderland, but it really is true. And it's just some of the things that you can do with graphene. It's almost how big is your imagination?
It is. It's interesting. When and I shared this with you when we got together before, when I had gone to MIT for a day and talking about graphene and research and technology out there, and the conversation that I had with them, and you and I talked about as well, was how graphene completely changes the solar panel industry and solar energy. It's, right now the solar panels have a lot of silicon. Silicon is not a very flexible material. You have to have glass on top of it, which becomes the most expensive part of a solar panel. It's not very efficient, but it gets to the point where if you put graphene in the paint that you're painting a roof or a part of a house with or a building with, that paint or that coating could then absorb that sunlight, conduct that energy down to an area where that energy can be captured and then reused.
Certainly right. In fact, that is one of the predominant reasons that we have attracted this glass company from Europe, and they're interested from two standpoints. The coating of graphene on their glass to eliminate or virtually eliminate pitting and those kind of things that happen as glass gets abraded by wind and sand and things of that nature. But predominantly they're coming to research the coating, using graphene as a coating, and graphene is actually clearer than glass. It lets more light through than glass. So graphene in its purest form is just, you could say, absolutely clear. And so when it's put on as a coating properly and molecularly bound to glass, it can actually make the windows in a building become solar panels. So, and more efficient solar panels than solar panels that are made silicon-based like you're talking about. Yeah,
this may drive some environmentalists crazy when you actually tell them that what's going to prove the cost viability and efficient viability of solar power is a coal or at least a carbon-based substance.
Well, I never really thought about driving the environmentalists crazy with this, but now that you mentioned it, that doesn't sound altogether like a bad thing, having been in the coal business all my life. But certainly it will bring some rational thinking to those that may have thought irrationally before.
So we have about a minute left, and I wanted to give you a second. Where is the best place for our listeners to go to find more about graphene, more about this research, more about your company?
You can find us at Graphene. That's just the letter X, PHENE.com. And we have a new website that's just being populated there. And if you're ever in the Wise area, we're at 5934 Windswept Boulevard in Wise, Virginia. And we would welcome anybody that would like to come and learn more about graphene or has an economic interest in graphene or think they might. We'd certainly like to afford them the time to tell them about it.
Well, I really appreciate your time on this show, Dr. Hooper, and I look forward to having people all over the world stop talking about Silicon Valley out in California and start talking about Graphene Valley out in Wise, Virginia.
That is a good thing, and we look forward to that as well, Glenn. Thanks for having us on, and anytime we'd love to share with you.
Thank you. Have a great day. This is Glenn Davis on the John Fredericks Show, and we'll be back in a few minutes.